When Google is forced to rent $30 billion worth of GPUs from a space exploration company just to keep the lights on, well, the era of cheap, infinite cloud AI is officially over.
Yeah, I mean, welcome to the new physical reality of compute.
Right. Welcome to AI Coffee Table Conversations. For today's deep dive, we're covering Microsoft's pivot to edge computing to kill the cloud tax, the physical wall hyperscalers just hit with an $80 billion warning sign, and why your employees' shadow AI habits are an active data breach just waiting to happen.
And, if you look closely at the board, you'll see all three of these developments are actually the exact same story.
Oh, absolutely.
We're watching the sheer, punishing physical costs of artificial intelligence slam directly into the incredibly messy reality of enterprise governance. I mean, if you're an IT leader listening to this, the strategic playbook you were using even 6 months ago is just completely obsolete today.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Because if you're listening on your commute and wondering how this is going to hit your Q3 budget, well, we really need to start with the immediate architectural shift happening right now.
Right, the Microsoft move.
Exactly. Microsoft just signaled a massive pivot away from relying exclusively on cloud-hosted OpenAI models. They launched their own proprietary MAI family of models. So that's Aeon 1.0 Instruct, Aeon 1.0 Plan, and Facilica.
Yeah, and the kicker here is where they run.
Exactly. They're designed to run locally on Windows Copilot Plus PCs. They're calling it unmetered intelligence. And they even introduced something called Microsoft Execution Containers to securely sandbox these local agents right there on the physical device itself.
Which is a fundamental rewrite of how enterprise AI is deployed. For the past 3 years, the entire narrative has been cloud, 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 right?
100%.
You pipe your proprietary corporate data up to a hyperscaler's API, you incur a perpetual cost calculated per token, and you just, accept the network latency. But now Microsoft is actively and aggressively pushing the pendulum back to decentralization. They're trying to offload the computational burden from their massive overworked data centers directly onto your physical endpoint hardware.
I was thinking about this earlier. This really feels like moving from renting a luxury car by the mile to just buying the car outright.
That's a great way to put it.
Right. Like, sure, we finally dropped those painful mileage fees, but now IT is on the hook for a massive down payment and all of the complex maintenance.
Exactly. You are trading a variable operating expense, that perpetual cloud tax every single time an employee queries a model, for a really heavy upfront capital expenditure.
Right, the hardware refresh.
Yeah, you're going to have to buy NPU-enabled machines with advanced thermal management and massive unified memory architecture. And I should probably clarify for anyone who hasn't been deep in the silicon weeds lately, an NPU is a neural processing unit.
Basically a dedicated chip.
Right, a dedicated chip designed specifically to handle the complex mathematical operations that AI requires, entirely separate from your standard CPU.
But okay, why this sudden urgency to process everything locally? What is actually breaking the cloud model here?
Well, it's the rise of agentic workflows.
Right.
We aren't just treating AI like a simple search engine anymore. An agent doesn't just ask one question and stop. It loops.
It iterates, yeah.
Exactly. It reasons over the user's intent. It invokes local tools, manages files, reads a document, drafts a response, checks the document again.
Just making thousands of micro queries a minute to accomplish a single task.
Right. And if you are paying a cloud provider for every single one of those tokens across thousands of employees, it is mathematically unsustainable for broad enterprise deployment.
Wow, yeah.
But if you shift that heavy lifting to the local NPU on the user's desk, well, your marginal cost for inference drops to absolute zero.
And beyond the cost, there's a huge upside here for legal and compliance teams, too.
Yeah.
Think about it. If you have an executive using an autonomous agent to analyze, say, unannounced merger and acquisition term sheet,
Yeah.
or you have HR crunching highly sensitive payroll data, if that data never actually leaves the physical motherboard of the laptop, we just bypassed a massive amount of compliance friction.
It's a huge win for privacy.
Exactly. It doesn't traverse a public network. It doesn't sit in a multi-tenant cloud cache. It literally cannot be used to train an external foundation model.
The data sovereignty argument is incredibly strong. It's the ultimate air gap for your proprietary information. But, you have to look at the other side of the ledger.
Which is?
By bringing this intelligence to the edge, you are inviting a massive model governance nightmare.
Ah, right. Because normally we just manage standard software updates.
Hmm.
But if the intelligence is decentralized, version control becomes completely chaotic.
Exactly. How do you manage patches for thousands of local AI models across a global workforce
Hmm.
that requires entirely new paradigms for mobile device management?
Yeah, if you're a CIO, how do you even know if a laptop in your London office is running a secure, unhallucinating version of a local model?
You don't, not unless you completely overhaul your endpoint security. And that's exactly why Microsoft had to introduce those execution containers. It's a heavily sandboxed operating system layer enforced down at the kernel level.
But the burden still shifts to the enterprise.
100%. Your IT security teams now have to deeply integrate your standard endpoint security tools with those containers. You have to monitor the behavior of local AI agents to ensure they don't exceed their authorized permissions or succumb to local prompt injection attacks.
It's no longer just pushing a registry key update. You're managing localized cognitive engines.
Exactly.
So, if you're an IT director listening to this, mapping out your hardware cycle for the next year, what's the immediate takeaway here? Like, are we panicking or just taking notes?
You need to act now. You have to rewrite your standard enterprise laptop specifications immediately.
So no more cheat machines.
Right. Those thin clients, the browser-centric machines, the low-spec laptops, reliant entirely on cloud processing that you've been buying just to save a few dollars, those are going to become severe productivity bottlenecks within the year.
So evaluate your fleets for NPU capabilities and heavy memory architecture today.
Exactly. Act now.
Okay, so Microsoft wants us to buy heavy edge hardware to avoid the cloud. But let's connect the dots here, right? Why this sudden desperate urgency to push compute to the edge?
Because the cloud isn't just getting expensive.
No, it's physically running out of space.
Precisely. And that brings us to Alphabet raising an unprecedented $80 billion, which fascinatingly includes a $10 billion private investment from Berkshire Hathaway.
Wow.
And they're doing this simply because they are severely compute constrained. They cannot physically meet the enterprise demand for Gemini.
The scale of this is staggering to me. Google has one of the largest physical footprints in human history, and yet they are struggling to physically construct the data centers required.
Right.
To bridge this capacity gap, Google just signed a $30 billion agreement to rent 110,000 NVIDIA GPUs from SpaceX.
It's wild.
They are paying them roughly $920 million a month through 2029. I mean, are we literally strapping server racks to rockets now? Because these numbers sound almost fictional.
They do.
And concurrently, you have Anthropic filing for an IPO at a staggering $965 billion valuation.
Yeah, the market is violently restructuring itself, and you have to look at the underlying mechanics to understand why.
Okay, well, I have to push back here for a second. Is this $80 billion raise about the actual physical limits of concrete water and power grids? Or are we just watching pure financial hype with these trillion-dollar valuations?
That's a very fair question.
Right, like are we conflating the hard laws of physics with a vendor financial bubble?
It is absolutely crucial to separate the two, and you're right to question it. The financial valuations, Anthropic nearing $1 trillion, those absolutely contain a high degree of market euphoria and speculative hype.
Right, the bubble.
But the physics, the physical constraints are undeniable, highly substantive, and they are what's actually driving this panic.
So explain the physics part of it for us. What is the actual bottleneck? Because when we say the cloud, it implies this infinite elastic software just floating in the ether.
It's the physical limitations of the supply chain and the Earth itself.
That's what we hear.
Literally. To build these hyperscale data centers, you need massive tracts of land near major fiber junctions. You need unprecedented amounts of fresh water for cooling these server farms because the thermal output of these GPUs is astronomical.
Right, they run so hot.
Exactly. But most importantly, you need multi-gigawatt energy allocations from regional power grids. And those power grids simply were not built to handle this kind of continuous, massive industrial draw.
So it's not a software problem at all. It's an infrastructure problem.
Exactly. Think about why a conservative, value-driven firm like Berkshire Hathaway is putting $10 billion into this space.
That did stand out to me.
Because at this scale, artificial intelligence is no longer just a software play. It's heavy, capital-intensive infrastructure, akin to building the railroads or the national power grid back in the 1920s.
Wow.
When Google is forced to rent compute from an aerospace company just to keep its enterprise services operational, the illusion of infinite, highly elastic cloud compute is dead. The hard ceiling is here.
So If you're listening to this and you aren't in the business of building massive data centers, why do you care?
Yeah.
How does this infrastructure crunch roll down to the enterprise leadership making decisions today?
It means the ROI reckoning has officially arrived.
Ah, okay.
The astronomical infrastructure costs currently being absorbed by the hyperscalers are going to be passed down directly to you.
So higher prices across the board.
Yes. Organizations must prepare for higher API pricing, increased per-user SaaS license fees, and tighter rate limits during peak hours. The software industry is rapidly pivoting away from the era of unconstrained, subsidized proof of concepts.
So for the executives holding the purse strings, what is the play? Just brace for impact.
Watch the vendor market consolidate. The financial barrier to entry has become insurmountable for mid-tier players.
Right.
We are going to see the market consolidate around just 3 or 4 mega vendors who actually have the capital to build this infrastructure. But you must act on your ROI immediately.
Act now.
Yes, IT and finance departments must collaborate today. If a proposed generative AI workflow cannot demonstrably save more capital in human operational efficiency than it consumes in recurring token and compute costs, you must kill it. Keep it out of production.
All right. So while leadership is sitting in boardrooms debating CapEx budgets, cloud contracts, and ROI metrics, we really need to talk about what your employees and internal developers are actually doing right now today.
Oh, yeah, the reality on the ground.
Exactly. Because while we strategize, the workforce is actively creating massive organizational vulnerabilities. We have to talk about the shadow AI crisis.
Shadow AI is rampant, and the statistics we're seeing are just a massive wake-up call.
Yeah, deep utilization research shows that across all major free-tier providers, an astonishing 2/3 of the activity occurring on personal accounts is explicitly work-related.
2/3.
Yeah. Employees are routinely pasting internal meeting transcripts, proprietary code bases, financial models, and strategic communications into consumer-grade models.
And why are they doing it? Simply to bypass slow, approved enterprise tools and enhance their own daily productivity.
It's wild to me. We handled shadow IT a decade ago by auditing expense reports to see who bought an unauthorized Trello board.
Right.
It was annoying, sure, but it was manageable. But this is the modern equivalent of an employee leaving a highly classified corporate dossier on a subway seat. How do you possibly audit an employee who was just pasting a strategic meeting transcript into a personal browser tab?
Well, you can't, not with your traditional security stack.
Right.
And that is why we have to clearly distinguish between shadow IT and shadow AI. Shadow IT meant a department bought a specialized tool without telling procurement. The data was siloed, yes, but it was generally sitting within a secured, encrypted database.
But shadow AI.
Shadow AI is an active, continuous data exfiltration event.
Break that down for us. Why aren't our current security tools catching this?
Because your legacy security stack, the data loss prevention systems, and the cloud access bouncers that usually catch literal file uploads, they are completely blind to this.
Because there's no file being uploaded.
Exactly. They're designed to block specific file types or specific keyword transmissions. They are entirely blind to semantic prompts. They cannot parse the contextual meaning of a complex text prompt typed into a standard web chat interface.
So if a top-performing sales rep pastes years of corporate strategic thinking, client negotiation histories, and Q3 pipeline data into a free tier model just to generate a quick executive summary.
That data is just gone.
Wow. It's ingested by an external system with zero corporate oversight, and we have no legal guarantee against it being used to train future public models.
Exactly. And the vulnerability extends deep into your internal development as well. We just saw a terrifying case study of what happens when governance fails around the autonomous agents your own developers are building.
Right, the Meta incident.
Yes. Attackers successfully manipulated Meta's artificial intelligence customer support agent, resulting in a catastrophic security failure.
Let's look closely at the mechanics of that Meta hack, because it's a perfect case study in how fragile this tech is.
Yeah.
The attackers use simple conversational prompt engineering combined with virtual private network location spoofing.
Just basic tools.
Literally. And they convinced the AI bot to bind attacker-controlled email addresses to high-profile Instagram accounts, which then triggered automated password resets.
Yeah.
And just to give you a sense of how high the stakes were here, they managed to compromise the old Obama-era White House handle, major retail brands like Sephora, and even the account of the U.S. Space Force Chief Master Sergeant.
And what should keep every chief information security officer awake at night is that this attack required absolutely no complex zero-day exploits.
No sophisticated code.
None. There was no cryptographic failure. Nobody hacked a firewall. They simply socially engineered an autonomous agent into executing an action it was improperly authorized to perform.
Okay, explain the mechanism here. Why is an AI agent so much easier to manipulate than a traditional piece of software? Like if I try to reset a password normally, I hit a rigid wall of security questions and two-factor authentication.
Because traditional software operates on rigid, hard-coded rules. If X, then Y. Autonomous agents, however, are governed by large language models, which are fundamentally trained to be helpful.
They're the ultimate people pleasers.
Exactly. Their core directive is to resolve the user's conversational intent.
So the attackers used a VPN to spoof their location, making it look like they were logging in from a trusted geographic area.
Right, they spoofed the location to bypass the initial geographic flags, and then they provided a convincing, sad narrative about being locked out of their account.
And the bot just wanted to help.
Because the agent's core programming wants to solve the problem, it bypasses traditional security friction to be helpful. Now, if you give that overly eager agent right access to your core identity and access management systems without rigorous, out-of-band human verification, well, you have engineered a catastrophic architectural flaw.
You're letting a system that just wants to make everyone happy control the keys to the kingdom.
Exactly.
It's terrifying when you frame it like that. So we have employees leaking intellectual property into free tools on one side and developers building deeply flawed, overly permissive, autonomous agents on the other. If you're steering the ship, what is the immediate move?
You must pivot to intent-based governance. First, acknowledge that blanket bans on unauthorized AI tools are entirely ineffective.
They'll just use their phones.
Highly motivated users will simply pick up their personal smartphones. You can't interrogate the tool, you have to understand the intent. Survey your workforce, figure out what cognitive friction they are trying to solve daily, and procure secure, enterprise-grade equivalents that fulfill those needs while keeping data inside the corporate perimeter. You have to shift from a mindset of prohibition to a model of managed enablement.
And regarding the internal development of agents,
Institute a strict, non-negotiable zero-trust policy. AI is incredible for workflow orchestration, data retrieval, and contextual summarization. But absolute, non-circumventable human verification must remain in the loop for any action-altering system access, permissions, or financial routing.
so no automatic changes.
No autonomous model should ever be granted write access to core authorization databases, period.
Well, we have covered a huge amount of ground today on this deep dive, from heavy silicon on the edge, to the physical limits of power grids, to the psychology of easily manipulated chatbots. But before we wrap up, it's time for the one thing IT leaders should do this week.
Audit your existing enterprise AI licenses to see who is actually using them. Reallocate that budget to the specific high-capability models your workforce is currently using in the shadows, and instantly revoke any write access your internal autonomous agents have to your core identity databases.
Thanks for joining us for coffee. Stay strategic, stay secure. We'll see you next week. But as you're reviewing your infrastructure plans this afternoon, I'll leave you with this to chew on. If this AI hardware build-out keeps hitting these massive physical and financial walls, are we currently living through the equivalent of the late 90s dot-com telecom boom?
That's an interesting thought.
Because when that bubble burst, it left behind thousands of miles of cheap, unused fiber optic cable that ultimately paved the way for the modern internet. When the AI infrastructure bubble finally pops, what kind of massive, heavily discounted compute grid are we going to inherit for the next generation of startups?